Me getting to how old I am, I always double check the information that I get from mainstream media and the government. You know what I mean, right? Apparently, it is all coming out now, how all these things have been just happening behind the scenes without the American people's knowledge. Just check this out, guys.
Good morning, Maria. Well, Fox Business has obtained internal communications between the White House and Facebook during the height of the pandemic. And some of these communications that we have obtained, we cannot air on TV. They need to be bleeped. The big takeaway here, White House officials had an F-bomb riddled face-off with Facebook, demanding they hand over more data on its users and asking for special tools to target users, all in an effort to get more shots in arms. President Biden's then digital director, Rob Flaherty, asking Facebook if government agencies could have access to more targeting tools, asking, quote, since it's a global pandemic, can we give agencies access to targeting parameters that they normally wouldn't be able to? This pandemic power struggle hit its peak as Flaherty and the White House's senior advisor for the COVID response, Andy Slavitt, joined Biden's digital director on a call where Facebook employees were berated by the White House for not turning over more data. Flaherty saying on the call, quote, I feel like we're running around in circles. Some partners give us lots of information. Some partners tell us to F right off. This feels like we're chasing our tails. If you don't want to give information, just say that. My dream for Facebook to play ball. It's about, will we get out of this effing mess? I'm not doubting that you are sincerely trying to solve this problem in good faith. I'm doubting that you are telling us everything.
I mean, at this point, it's hardly surprising just how easily people forget nowadays. And I swear, people's addiction to apps like TikTok definitely isn't helping either. Our collective attention span has definitely gone down a lot. But check out this recent headline. New email shows that C-19 medicine mandates were based on a lie. Now, I really don't think that we're all that surprised. And it's not exactly uncommon for politicians or bureaucrats to lie to us. But what seems to be unique, though, is just how much and how big the lies were during the whole pandemic. Just recently, we got a bombshell. New documents indicate the entire justification for the medicine mandates were based on a falsehood, and that public health officials knew about it. They knew it was based on a falsehood, guys, but they promoted it anyway. Emails obtained from the Freedom of Information Act request show that CDC Director Rochelle Walensky and former NIH Director Francis Collins were aware of and discussed breakthrough cases of C-19 in January 2021, right when the medicine became widely available, meaning cases of people getting C-19 even though they were already vaccinated. Now, in her email, Walensky points out how clearly it is an important area of study, links to a study raising the issue, and assures the person that she's sending it to that Dr. Anthony Fauci is looped into these conversations. But at the same time, Walensky was also saying something quite different to the public. 2 months after discussing this data, she said vaccinated people don't carry the virus and don't get sick. In a congressional hearing, after it became clear people were able to get infected with C-19 after receiving the vaccine, she defended her original statements by claiming it was true at the time she said it, namely for the strands we were dealing with in early 2021. We now know that was not true and that Walensky herself knew it wasn't true. Even professors at the Stanford School of Medicine are speaking up. They point out how, despite this knowledge, they continued to push vax mandates anyway. Now, we're not arguing against the vaccines here, but the fact that the vaccine mandates were pushed, sometimes required, I mean, some people were just kind of like, all right, I'm gonna take this just to keep my job. It put people in a really tough spot, and I know it left a lot of people angry. Even though those in charge knew people could contract and spread the virus while being vaccinated is definitely something that we need to talk about. That's all I'm saying. That they misled and continue to mislead the public on this, it makes it even worse. Now, if the vaccine stopped C-19 dead in its tracks, as Fauci explained, then the decision to institute a vaccine mandate would just be a controversial yet ultimately legitimate public health measure. The fact that it did not do that, but rather had primarily personal benefits, completely removes the justification for the mandates. The Biden administration tried to impose a vaccine mandate on employers. Thousands of people were fired from their jobs. And there was a time when unvaccinated people were not even allowed in restaurants in some of the country's largest cities. And it was all based on a lie. Comment down below if this information pisses you off, but at the same time is also waking you up. There needs to be accountability to us, the people. Hold power to account and all of that. From vaccines to masks to schools to economic aid, it seems that every aspect of the pandemic, it had its own set of lies and distortions. Now I'm just saying, it looks like there's a very good reason why trust in our institutions and our government has taken such a hit in recent years. If those in charge don't recognize what they did, commit not to do it again, and actually, act differently next time that they're in a similar situation, then institutional trust is only going to get worse. Unfortunately, we may be holding our breath on that one to happen anytime soon. And so that's why it's all the more important to stay updated, guys. And I definitely recommend hitting the subscribe button and also tapping that notification bell. That way you won't miss out on our essential American updates. And hey guys, I just want to thank you guys so much for the support. The more of you guys are lighting up the like button, the farther this information will reach beyond mainstream media. So I appreciate you guys for the likes. Now, another C-19 related question being brought to light recently. New research shows CDC exaggerated the evidence for masks to fight C-19. This is not my information, guys. This is documented. So a new review published by the Cochrane Library, a pretty authoritative collection of scientific databases, they analyzed 18 randomized controlled trials, and these were aimed to measure the impact of surgical masks or N95 respirators on the transmission of respiratory viruses. Now, I found that wearing a mask in public places probably makes little or no difference in the number of infections. These findings really get to the heart of the whole mask mandate debate. You know what I mean? Remember how much media drama and frustration those masks caused during the pandemic? Well, turns out these findings also cast doubt on whether we can really trust the CDC to give us accurate health information. I'm not saying they don't. I'm just saying it makes you question it. Back in September 2020, the CDC was all about masks, calling them the ultimate weapon against C-19. Even better than vaccines, if you can believe that. Then Walensky doubled down in November 2021, saying that wearing a mask could slash your infection risk by a whopping 80%. Then just a few months later, the CDC claimed that their studies showed that the masks could lower the chance of testing positive by up to 83%. But as it turns out, those claims were based on two very shaky pieces of evidence. And so first, they did lab experiments in controlled settings, which, let's be real guys, don't exactly mimic real life situations. And second, they looked at observational studies that really didn't account for the other factors influencing how the virus spreads. And so despite all the CDC hype, the Cochrane review found essentially no relationship between mask wearing and disease rates, whether measured by reported symptoms or by laboratory tests. Now, when it comes to symptoms consistent with C-19 or influenza, they definitely concluded that wearing masks in the community probably makes little to no difference. They even reached the same conclusion regarding laboratory confirmed cases. The authors suggest several possible explanations for these results, including poor study design, inconsistent or improper mask use, self-contamination of the mask by hands, saturation of masks with saliva, and increased risk-taking based on an exaggerated sense of security. But one thing is clear. Instead of following the science on masks, the CDC distorted it to support a predetermined conclusion. Another one about mask mandates. No evidence that vaccine mandates in major cities reduce C-19 cases. Can you believe that? I didn't make this up. So a new study from the Marcatus Center at George Mason University concluded that C-19 vaccine mandates in 9 cities did not appear to make any difference in terms of curbing cases of deaths from this pandemic. This also goes for mandates and statistics from Boston, Chicago, Los Angeles, New Orleans, New York City, Philadelphia, San Francisco, Seattle, Washington, D.C. Yep, says it right here, guys. No significant effect on vaccine uptake, C-19 cases or C-19 deaths, and this is largely consistent for all U.S. cities that implemented the mandate. But instead, millions of people were prevented from entering restaurants, bars, gyms, theaters, sporting arenas, and pretty much any other indoor area without proof of a C-19 vaccination. In New York City, 1,430 city employees were terminated for not following the mandate. And most restaurants, they lost customers and their staff. Basically, it was too easy to get around citywide mandates. Now, unlike countrywide mandates imposed in Europe, people can get by unvaccinated in cities with mandates by simply traveling a neighboring city. But bottom line, C-19 cases were not affected by the mandate. C-19 deaths were not affected by it. And people were not more likely to get vaccinated at all in the first place. Not to mention, by the time the studied cities implemented their mandates, a pretty significant percentage of their populations had already been vaccinated. So the whole idea behind the mandate is more people are going to get vaccinated. Therefore, they're going to reduce the spread of C-19. But that didn't really happen. In fact, we're seeing a turnaround of some decisions based on these mandates. I mean, take this one, for example. The judge rules in favor of 7 Massachusetts state troopers who lost jobs over refusing to get the C-19 vaccination. The news release of the State Police Association of Massachusetts, an independent arbitrator, found that the state police violated the troopers' rights to anti-discrimination and affirmative action. This is after Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker signed an executive order requiring all executive branch employees to provide proof of vaccination by October 2021 or face disciplinary action, including possible termination. 11 Massachusetts state troopers and 1 sergeant were fired in April 2022 over their refusal to get vaccinated. Following the arbitrator's ruling, 7 state troopers will be reinstated and awarded their full seniority rights and all benefits minus any interim earnings and or unemployment compensation. Kind of satisfying when you read the tweet. It says here, earlier today, I had the distinct honor and privilege of informing 7 of our troopers who have been suspended without pay due to Executive Order 595 that they would be returning to work. The fight began in October 2021 when the association filed a grievance on their behalf. Since then, the association has been committed to making these members whole. Though this lengthy and grueling grievance and arbitration process, the association has remained steadfast in our fight to right the injustices of the Baker administration. It's coming straight from their Twitter post, guys. Now, at this point, being pro C-19 vaccine and pro transparency, they don't have to be exclusive of one another. I think there needs to be a little bit more openness with what the data is actually saying for there to be any kind of trust between the government and the American people. You know what I mean? Just look at this one. Accessing data from the FDA and the Health Canada websites and combining results from journal articles that publish the Pfizer and Moderna trials, the authors concluded that the absolute risk of a serious adverse event from the mRNA vaccines, a rate of 1 in 800, exceeded the risk reduction in C-19 hospitalization. Translation, the risk of getting a serious complication from the mRNA vaccines was actually bigger than the risk being reduced for C-19 hospitalization. An analysis in BMJ Global Health really laid it out here. Vaccine mandates and the way health authorities talk about them can seriously mess with people's trust and confidence in vaccines. These mandates might even stoke the flames of anti-vax movements and make people less likely to follow other health guidelines. That's not good, guys. So for example, there's data in Lancet Infectious Diseases saying that once you're hit with the virus, the transmission rates aren't all that different between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated crowds, which kind of puts a damper on the whole mandate idea. Like seriously, can you even argue for these mandates on solid science? And get this, with all this evidence, it's not far-fetched to think that someone like Novak Djokovic, who got denied entry into the US for not meeting C-19 vaccination requirements, could actually sue the immigration authority for messing with their livelihood. Crazy, huh? And rather than encourage transparent debate about the true benefits and potential harms of the C-19 vaccine as new evidence is coming to light, those that encourage more critical thinking and adding to the database of relevant knowledge, they're being smeared by the media and even the scientific community. Social media even labels some of them as spreading misinformation. I just hope that we won't be labeled by YouTube like that. I have a lot of respect for YouTube, so we'll just see how that goes. We're sticking to the facts here, guys, especially since this kind of information control does a huge disservice to doctors, patients, and the public who deserve and want full transparency. Am I right, guys?